When you think of the gods and goddesses of ancient Greece, it can be overwhelming because their stories are so old, so detailed, and at times so endlessly complicated that they almost blurred together into a strange lullaby of myths, names, and events. And among those gods, there is Athena, the goddess of wisdom, war strategy, and craft. Tonight, as you let the quiet settle in and you close your eyes, I will tell you the entire story of Athena, not as an exciting tale of action, but as a long and gentle recounting, where each word floats by slowly, and the rhythm of the past wraps around you like a blanket. The myths themselves, though filled with battles and drama, become strangely calm when spoken softly and steadily, until all that remains is a soothing flow of memory about how the ancient Greeks imagined their goddess of wisdom. Athena's story begins not with her, but with her father, Zeus, the great king of the gods, who ruled over the heavens from Mount Olympus. Zeus was not known for peace or patience, but for his power and cunning. He was the kind of god who could never sit still, always scheming, always watching, always acting to secure his throne. But in his endless hunger for power, he sometimes found himself entangled in prophecies. And as the old myths tell us, there was once a prophecy that warned Zeus, the child born from his first wife, the Titaness Métis, would one day become stronger than him and might overthrow him. Zeus, terrified of being dethroned, did something strange and disturbing. When Métis was pregnant with their child, Zeus swallowed her whole. He tricked her into transforming into a fly, and then swallowed her down, hoping that this would end the prophecy and prevent the child from being born. But myths are never so simple, and destiny never so easy to swallow. Inside the body of Zeus, Métis continued to live, and with her, the unborn child continued to grow. And so, within the mind of the king of the gods, deep in his very thoughts, the goddess Athena began to form. She grew not in a womb, but within the head of her father, developing her strength, her wisdom, and her purpose in silence. Days turned into nights, and Zeus went about his rule, but soon he began to feel the weight of a terrible pain, a pressure building in his skull, as though his very mind was splitting apart. The pain grew unbearable, and in desperation he called upon the smith of the gods, Hephaestus, to relieve him. With his hammer, Hephaestus struck the skull of Zeus, and with a flash of light and a sound like thunder, the head split open, and from it sprang Athena, fully grown, clad in shining armor, holding a spear and a shield, her face calm but fierce. Imagine that moment, when instead of a small and helpless infant, there appeared a goddess in her prime, a woman of wisdom and strength, radiant in divine power. The other gods marveled at her birth, for it was unlike any birth they had ever seen. From that day onward, Athena was recognized as one of the most important deities of Olympus, not born of ordinary means, but sprung directly from the mind of Zeus himself, a symbol of thought, intellect, and the power of strategy. Athena became known as the goddess of wisdom, but not only wisdom of books and ideas, wisdom of war, of city building, of craft, of justice, and of patience. She was the protector of heroes, the guardian of cities, and the divine presence that guided mortals toward skill and knowledge. Her relationship with her father Zeus was close, for she was said to be his favorite child, the one he trusted above all others. She never rebelled against him as some of his other children did, and in her loyalty she became a steady force in the divine order. One of the most famous myths of Athena concerns her contest with Poseidon, the god of the sea. Long ago, the people of a new city in Greece sought a patron deity, one who would protect them, watch over them, and bless their land. Both Athena and Poseidon desired this honor, and so they competed before the people. Poseidon struck the earth with his trident, and from the ground there sprang a spring of salt water, a symbol of his dominion over the seas. The water was powerful, but it was not useful for drinking, and its saltiness reminded the people of the storms and dangers of the ocean. Then Athena came forward and offered her gift, the olive tree. It was humble, but it gave oil, wood, and fruit. It promised nourishment, trade, and long-lasting peace. The people chose Athena's gift, and so the city became Athens, forever bearing her name, with the olive tree as its symbol of prosperity and wisdom. Poseidon, angry at being denied, sent floods and storms, but the choice had been made, and Athena's presence remained forever tied to the heart of Greece. Another story tells of how Athena, though wise and measured, was also stern when mortals showed arrogance. There was once a young woman named Arachne, who was gifted in the art of weaving. Her tapestries were so fine and beautiful that people whispered she must have been taught by the goddess herself. But Arachne denied it, She claimed her skill was her own and even dared to challenge Athena to a contest. When the goddess heard of this boldness, she disguised herself as an old woman and approached Arachne, warning her to show humility, to give honor where honor was due. But Arachne refused and insisted she was greater even than the goddess. So Athena revealed herself, shining and powerful, and accepted the challenge. They both began to weave, Athena with her divine threads, Arachne with her mortal hands. When they finished, Athena's tapestry showed the gods in their glory, but Arachne's depicted the flaws and scandals of the Olympians, exposing their cruelty and deception. Her work was flawless, perfect, undeniable. The goddess could not find fault with the craft itself, but she was enraged by the audacity. In her fury, Athena struck the tapestry and the loom, and then, pitying the mortal, transformed her into a spider, doomed to weave forever. And so the name Arachne became the origin of spiders, who spin their webs endlessly, a reminder of both mortal talent and divine punishment. Athena also appeared in the great epic stories of Greece. In the Iliad, she was a constant presence, guiding the Greeks in their war against Troy. She favored cleverness over brute force, and she stood behind the warriors who used strategy and intellect rather than rage. In the Odyssey, she became the constant protector of Odysseus, the wandering hero who struggled to return home after the war. Disguised in many forms, Athena offered him advice, courage, and protection, guiding him through storms and temptations until he could finally reach his home in Ithaca. To his son, Telemachus, she appeared as a mentor, urging him to seek strength and maturity, to become a man worthy of his father's legacy. To Odysseus himself, she was the unseen hand that steered him through despair. Without her, his story would have ended long before he ever returned to Penelope and his kingdom. Yet Athena was also a goddess of paradoxes. She was a goddess of war, but she hated unnecessary bloodshed. She was a goddess of wisdom, yet she could be harsh and unforgiving. She was often depicted as a virgin goddess, never married, never yielding to love or passion, embodying a purity of mind and purpose that set her apart from many other deities. In Athens, the Parthenon was built in her honor, a temple of marble and majesty, where her colossal statue stood with spear and shield, a protector, watching over her people. To the Athenians, she was more than a goddess, she was the soul of their city, the ideal of their values, the divine presence that inspired their art, philosophy, and democracy. Through all of these stories, Athena emerges not only as a goddess but as a symbol. She represents wisdom that comes from patience, strength that comes from knowledge, and power that comes from restraint. She was the goddess who could stand among warriors but also sit with craftsmen, who could guide kings but also teach weavers, who could be fierce in battle but also merciful in counsel. She was not a goddess of extremes, but of balance, and that balance made her beloved across the ancient world. And so, as the story stretches on, you see that Athena's tale is less about a single adventure and more about a presence woven into countless myths. She is there at the founding of cities, at the side of heroes, in the justice of courts, in the arts of weaving and metalwork, in the strategies of generals, in the quiet wisdom of those who think before they act. Her story is not one moment but many moments, flowing together like a river that touches everything it passes. To speak of her is to speak of the very idea of wisdom itself, and perhaps that is why her myth endures. And now, as the words slow down, as the story draws toward its end, you can imagine the calm, steady gaze of Athena herself, watchful and wise, a goddess not of chaos but of clarity. Her myths, though filled with battles and challenges, soften into a rhythm of knowledge and patience. Her olive tree still grows, her name still echoes in the city that became the heart of philosophy, and her spirit still whispers to all who seek wisdom over folly, thought over impulse, peace over violence. She remains eternal, not in noise or fury, but in the quiet strength of understanding. And with that, her story settles, like the calm after a long tale, leaving you with the stillness of ancient time, where wisdom rests and dreams begin.